Hi, I'm Donald McIntyre, Operations Manager at Emerald. This is the Emerald Blockchain course, Class 4, What is Bitcoin? The creator of Bitcoin is Satoshi Nakamoto. He was a person that used a pseudonym, very likely. This is not his real name. And very likely he was also a cypherpunk, like the persons I described in previous classes. And he knew everything about the previous inventions and created Bitcoin. To use a pseudonym, it was very common among the cypherpunk participants since the 80s and 90s because they were creating cryptography and cryptographic solutions to privacy and many things on the internet, and that was considered at the time matters of national security. So the government was always trying to control them and stuff like that. So it was very common to use a pseudonym for security reasons. So there's no mystery in this fact that Satoshi Nakamoto must be a cypherpunk and that he used a pseudonym. He invented Bitcoin in 2008 and launched it in 2009. Bitcoin, the way it works, is very, very simple. It is a network of computers around the world, between 50,000 and 100,000 computers that work and participate in the Bitcoin network. It's a peer-to-peer network. And they all have a very basic ledger with accounts and balances. Bitcoin is very simple in that sense. Because it has accounts and balances, and people can move Bitcoins from one account to the other, and that's all it does. One of the keys of Bitcoin security is that of the 50,000 to 100,000 computers that participate in the network, whenever any of the computers receives a new transaction to move Bitcoin from one place to another, from one account to the other, they retransmit that transaction to all the other computers in the network. In a matter of seconds, the same identical transaction is transmitted to all the participating computers around the world. And this means that there's also full replication, because in the end, all the computers have a copy of all the transactions. And this is a key part of Bitcoin security, which I'm going to explain a little bit later. The way these transactions are entered into the database is that all the Bitcoin network every 10 minutes is receiving new transactions all the time. It can more or less process up to 4,000 transactions per block or every 10 minutes. And a subset or a subgroup of the participants in the network are what are called miners, and they go accumulating these transactions, and they do proof of work that I explained in the previous videos when I explained Hashcash. Basically, they get all the transactions, and they have to do a lot of work for 10 minutes, spending a lot of capital in machines and electricity to produce a cryptographic stamp. It's called really a cryptographic hash, but I call it a cryptographic stamp because it's like a stamp that you put on a letter to authenticate it. And when they create this cryptographic stamp after 10 minutes of a lot of work by the miners, then they get all the transactions with a cryptographic stamp, and they send it to all the other computers in the network. And the other computers in the network receive this block. They verify all the transactions. They verify that the cryptographic stamp is genuine, in the sense that they have to do a lot of work to create it. This is key. And once they verify that, they put it as the next block in the blockchain. This is why it's called a blockchain, because all the transactions and the history of all the accounts and balances of Bitcoin are entered every 10 minutes as a new block of transactions with a cryptographic stamp. When all the nodes receive the block, the non-miner nodes receive a new block, and they verify it, they put it on the blockchain, and in the account of the miner, they deposit an amount of Bitcoin. They just print an arbitrary amount of Bitcoin that was set since the beginning. This means that Bitcoin has an algorithmic and fixed monetary policy. It was set since 2009, since the beginning, and that's going to be the only monetary policy in the history of Bitcoin. It started paying 50 Bitcoins for the miner who created the block, um, per block, as a reward to the miner in the first 4 years. Then in the second 4 years, that went to one half, which was 25. This is why every 4 years Bitcoin goes through what they call the halving, because it discounts by 50% or by one half the reward to the miners. Then in the next 12 in the next 4 year period, it paid 12 and a half. Now it's paying since 2020 6.25 Bitcoins per block, and in 2024 it's going to go down to 3.125, and like that it's going to go every 4 years, going by half. The payment to the miners is going to go down by one half until it diminishes. And there's only, with this schedule, there's only going to be in the history of the network 21 million Bitcoins. And this is going to happen more or less in the year 2130. So Bitcoin has a fixed monetary policy. This is key for the concept and the idea of hard money. And I'm going to explain why why proof of work is so important. Proof of work is very important because, as you may remember from previous class when I explained BitGold is an analogy to gold in the real world. Gold is valuable because miners in the real world have to spend a lot of capital to extract it, and this is why gold is very scarce and valuable. And this is what Bitcoin mimics, but inside the internet. So if you have all the miners of Bitcoin that have to do a lot of work and spend a lot of physical energy to create one block, and you're only going to reward them if they create that block spending so much energy, then you're imitating the scarcity and the value of gold, but inside the internet. This is why Bitcoin is called digital gold. So this is the first concept. The cost of creating blocks equals the cost of creating the currency, and this is what makes Bitcoin a hard money, not like traditional currencies that governments can print them whenever they want. This is the second concept is very important as well. It enables consensus between all the computers. You may wonder, how can 50,000 to 100,000 computers plus the miners around the world reach consensus on what is the latest block, being a decentralized network, and nobody's directing them, and it has no president and no managers and no website that you go and check. All the nodes just receive the block, and they know that is the correct block. If they get false blocks or fake blocks, or attackers sending them alternative information that is fraudulent, they know that the others are not the correct one, and the one that has that enormous amount of work done is the correct one. And that is how this contrast between the false ones and the ones that have proof of work enables all the computers every 10 minutes to know exactly what is the same history fully replicated all around the world. So proof of work, the fact that miners spend so much energy and work to create a cryptographic stamp for a block, that is the key of what Satoshi invented, because it enables the consensus in a decentralized way of all the computers around the world. This same information of having the stamp and knowing that the stamp is verified and genuine and has all that work done is the same information that lets the computers participate in the network freely. Any computer can join the network. They just ping other peers in the network, and they start sending them the blocks. And just by checking the proof of work, just because the miners did so much work, it is astronomically probable that that is the correct block and the correct blockchain. So it's very easy to enter the blockchain, leave the blockchain, and enter again. And this is one of the keys of decentralization, because nobody has to give anyone permission or can deny permission to anyone as long as they have an internet connection to participate in the network. And the information that lets you participate in the right network, even though there may be many attackers, from hackers to governments to people who don't like Bitcoin trying to corrupt it, is extremely difficult to stop you from participating and leaving and coming back again, because it's so easy to know which is the right network. As long as you have an internet connection, you can participate. This is seen in China, for example. In China and other countries, Bitcoin is prohibited. But when you check the maps of where are the nodes of Bitcoin, you can see that there's many nodes still operating in China. And there's even mining, even though it's prohibited, miners are starting to grow again in China. And this is the decentralized and permissionless nature of Bitcoin that is permitted thanks to proof of work. Proof of work, this last is also very important, because Bitcoin has built already like 750,000 blocks until today, more or less. And if anyone wanted to corrupt the past history or change a transaction or delete a transaction from a year ago or 2 years ago, they would have to do all the proof of work again. And that would represent billions of dollars in work again and electricity. So it's basically impossible, practically impossible, to reverse and to change the history of a proof of work network like Bitcoin. So it's a very high protection, a high level of protection of the transactions and the history of the ledger, the accounts, and the balances, and therefore your property inside the network. So all these features that I just explained are called Nakamoto consensus. To summarize, full transmission plus full replication. This is very important, so that there is redundancy all around the world. Proof of work, block production, and fixed supply. All of these things together are called Nakamoto consensus. And what does Bitcoin accomplish? Well, because it's totally decentralized and it doesn't need any central authority, and nobody can deny the participation to anyone, and it is permissionless to go in and out. It is trust minimized. This is the concept of trust minimization that Nick Szabo explained a lot in papers and essays. It's not totally zero trust, because you're in a way you're trusting the 50 to 100,000 computers plus miners that your property is going to be there, but it's extremely minimized. And this trust minimization implies a lot of decentralization and implies a level of security that has never been accomplished before for systems of property such as Bitcoin and money in general. It can survive a nuclear war. This is what I say, full transmission and full replication is so important, because as long as there's a few computers around the world that are running Bitcoin, it doesn't matter what happens in the world. If there's an asteroid falls into Earth, or there's a nuclear war or something, as long as there's some computers running the network, your property is always going to be there and protected, and your accounts and balances and everything. So that's the metaphor that many people use, that it may survive. It can survive a nuclear war. And finally, the long sought objective of cypherpunks was to create hard money for the internet, and Bitcoin is the creation of digital gold or hard money inside the internet. Thank you very much for watching this Emerald blockchain course, class 4, what is Bitcoin? And please remember to download Emerald Cash at emerald.cash/download. Thank you very much.